That's why we get excited when we walk through a building and I'm like, wow, storage units. Wow, nobody's charging for parking.
What I always loved about any real estate was that you valued with a cap rate. It's like, it's so objective. Like if you can add dollars. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like cap rates, like it's not like people are shopping by a cap rate. Like there's such a shooting from the hip offer process for so many buyers and what have you, but the market still does honor a range, and you're somewhere in a range usually.
For sure.
Yeah, exactly.
You can take a look at a deal and go, that's not going to sell. And it doesn't, because they're way
it's just way out of the range, right? But there is like a variance within that range.
Yeah, like we were looking at one a little northwest of the city, and it was at like a 1.5 cap rate. But at that cap rate, it's like $100,000 a door for that city. So it's like you're not if it was at the real cap rate for that city, you're looking at like $40,000 a door. No one in their right mind would sell at that price. So there always has to be that kind of middle ground of, well, cap rate isn't going to dictate everything, as you were saying.
Yeah.
Welcome back to REI Hot Seat. Andrew Hines here with Brad McCrae and David Hoshof, and we are talking about basically the individual changes you can make on a building and how that impacts the value. In other words, your net worth. So if we can add value to a building, say by, well, we have 3 examples today. Parking. Laundry.
Oh, sorry, storage.
Parking, storage, and there was one more thing. Oh, utilities.
Cutting utilities.
So we're going to dig into those 3 different topics. So utilities, I think the big thing we're talking about is passing on the cost to your tenants. Are you doing recovery, or are we talking about actually improving the efficiency of units?
Yeah.
Both?
This we just cut it by half. So if you were able to throw in meters and meter back, we've seen a lot of people now doing cost sharing. So getting new tenants in, even if it's not meter, just saying, hey, it's an extra 60, 70 bucks a month.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people who aren't in the space, like say you had a property and you just listed it with a realtor that does residential homes, they're not going to know these angles. They're not really going to get into that kind of stuff. Whereas you guys get into that stuff with your clients. And of course, like if you're looking at stuff to buy, you're seeing how can we add value.
People mock me all the time because I go through buildings and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this storage, right? Where the park? They charge for parking, and it's like, it's half the reason we wanted to do this exercise. This is probably the most overlooked aspect of ways to add value. There's really not a lot of effort, not a lot of horsepower to get some of these done.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing. It's like sometimes it's so damn simple. Like do the simple stuff first. Of course you can do the complex value adds. But you were talking, and this stemmed from a previous episode we did. I'm not sure if it was the last episode or the two episodes ago. But you were saying the different stuff you're looking at. And you mentioned that you look at the storage facilities or potential storage facilities. So one building in particular we were talking about, there was an open room that could either be turned into a unit or storage. And tell me like the logic, why you would do one versus the other.
Well, I mean, one versus the other is simply just math and effort, right? So how many storage units can you get in there? What's the effort required to actually put a unit in with the city? All right, so we have one we were talking about in Hamilton. It's 2, one's an 11 unit, one's a 10. Exact same building. They went through the effort of adding a 2-bedroom in the basement. In this particular deal, the way it was structured, it's not a lot of effort to put that another 2-bedroom in the other building. Right?
But that's more of a cost.
It's more of a cost, and it's still going to take more time, right? So
whereas no permits for storage, you're just gonna basically buy the little. Are we talking like the little metal 5x5 storage lockers?
Again, like not to sound like a politician, it sort of depends, right? Like and this is where getting some of the data run, right? Like what's the need? So a lot of units where you can store bikes as a good example, right? That adds a lot of value. So you can quantify it and then put numbers to it. So it's about cost, about time, and what you're going to get, right? The 5x5s are so easy to rent out.
And you could put a bike in those.
And people are always shocked. You say, hey, we could put 10 storage lockers in here, and they go, who's going to rent them? And you're like, everyone.
Everyone wants storage these days.
And you guys would only know that from experience, right? Somebody who just their first building ever, they're not going to know that.
I didn't either when we first started this journey, right? And it's like, if you make it look nice, if you think about somebody in a 1-bedroom unit, there's not a lot of storage, right? And if you can offer them something, say $50 a month, we can get your bike out of your family room. Right. We can get this and this down there. People go crazy.
Is that what you would typically go for, $50 a month, or can you push that a bit?
Here's another politician. It very much depends.
Location. In Toronto, obviously, you're going to go more.
You're getting way more. It also depends on the size of it too. Like if you're just putting in the smaller ones, of course, but there are
you're not going to go less
units.
than 50 probably even in like
not
Woodstock,
less than 50, but you can do ones that are slightly bigger and get a little bit more, of course. Like it's not I wouldn't say it's an even proportion of, if it's a 5x5 it's 50, if it's 10x10 it's 100, it's probably more.
So I have noticed that the cheap ones where you put the fence in front, like the chain link, the cost to actually put a true, we'll call it door up front with a nice lock on it, actually garners a lot more of a lift. It's actually worth the effort.
But aren't the 5x5s, they have that little swinging lock? It's just like wire mesh. But
yeah, but there's something anecdotal, but there's something about people being able to see into their stuff. It just doesn't feel secure.
Oh yeah, no, I agree.
You know what
I didn't like that at all.
That's what I'm saying.
My wife used to have that at her condo in Toronto.
Those are the great
I get asked that question like all the time with back when doing those storage units with condos was like, can people see into it? Because then you feel less like you're going to put value, like your actual value stuff in. I mean, it's just your junk drawer.
In fairness, somebody could have grabbed a poker stick and poked their stuff. So
is that what you're right? Yeah, like clip the wire and grab something.
No, but the holes were like
you can just do damage.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're thinking like that, it is a little weird. I get it.
The cost to actually put a door,
a proper door,
it is almost negligible. Like it's not.
But then the sides are still wire mesh, or the sides are a proper.
As long as it's covered and you can't see it. Like I think
you can easily put
like a
covering,
proper metal partition.
Yeah.
Now, what's the cost look like on that? Have you guys ever priced these? Do you have any idea what these are going to cost?
Did you do it?
I haven't recently, no.
Yeah. Like, are we looking at to add in a bunch of storage into this potential 2-bedroom space?
Yeah.
Right. Can we add in 30 lockers into that space? And are we going to spend $100,000 doing that?
No, it definitely wouldn't be. It wouldn't be that much. It depends on this, like
it might be $20,000 or something.
How the space is. Like if you have to, if it's just a concrete room with nothing finished in there, you want to finish the room a little bit as well. But the lockers themselves can be, 1,000-ish. Up to in space, depending on if you're adding doors, if you're making them if it's literally just chain link fence, that's quite cheap, and you're able to do all that. But if you're making them nice, if they're their own individual space with not being able to see through, the room itself is nice, lighting, all that, it can go up, but it's way cheaper than the cost of an actual unit.
We had a guy, client of ours in Hamilton, and in his parking lot, just the way it was designed, the building sort of went into an L. So there's this sort of gap, right? And then parking, and you couldn't put a car there. So him and I had this conversation. He goes, he's a contractor, and he's like, "Can I put storage lockers, outdoor storage lockers?" Yeah. And his were $2,000 each was the cost, but they were obviously outdoor, and he rented those easy. And what was cool about that is you can rent them to your neighbors if you really needed to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, there's always opportunity to sort of go this route.
Okay, so let's just say hypothetically you spend $30,000 doing it in a room. I mean, for lights, I'm going to put like those little LED pancakes and stuff. I'm not going to spend much on that.
No.
Yeah. So say I spent $30,000 to do 30, or you don't even need that many in this building, right? Like we were talking about a 20-unit building.
Yeah.
So you might do 20 some odd. What did you? Yeah. Let's run through your numbers here, because you had, and there's some highlights on this. We'll just focus on one thing at a time. So scroll down to the yellow highlight you have for storage, and let's talk.
Yeah,
through.
I think we'll just step back for a second. What we're trying to accomplish here is just, if you take how much you're going to increase in value, so if you're getting $1,000 a month, you're getting $12,000 a year, you take that number, you divide by the cap rate, and that's your starting point for a discussion on how much lift you're going to get. And we can get in the weeds on a little bit more of that as we go, but the whole premise of this sheet was exactly what we talked about.
We're tracking what's different. And this is what some people would call a net benefit calculation. When you do a net benefit calculation, you're only looking at what's different. So if I decide to add storage units, how many more dollars am I going to make? How much more cost am I going to have?
Right.
And so if there was an ongoing cost to having them, and we were talking off camera about this, are there any additional costs to adding storage? And I would say the one would be your property manager is probably going to want a piece.
Right.
Other than that, like for the simplicity of our calculation, we're not going to include that today because we just didn't have that in the sheet. Or it was harder to break it out. It was automatically built into the sheet.
And something keeping it simple, right? Like the idea of this is just when we go through buildings, why do I get so hyped about, I can add 6 storage lockers here, or hey, nobody's charging for parking on the leases. Like, there's a reason we get excited. And
right. And those are the ads that you can do where there's like, it's literally only the property manager that's going to be the added expense. They're just going to take a piece of it. Their normal, whatever, 5% or whatever you're giving them. But the rest of it, no. Whereas you pointed out, like if you're renting a new unit, you're closer to 30% or maybe 25% in expenses between, utilities, property taxes are going to go up. You're going to get reassessed. Hopefully you can work the storage out without them knowing. So that's kind of the idea here. So knowing that we're kind of approaching this from the what's different mentality, because that's really what you want to know. If I make this decision, how do I benefit?
Well said.
All right. So let's take a look at storage.
So we've got a hypothetical 10 unit, everything to your point, Andrew, everything's the same except we changed parking, storage, and utility cost. So if we go to parking, originally nobody's charging for parking on the left. On the right, we're going to charge $75 a spot. There's 10 spots. It's $9,000, right?
That's $9,000. No, that's not like a quick linear thing. Like you're just all of a sudden 1 year you switch everybody over to paid parking, right?
Well, so here's a great example in the weeds here. Guy buys a 30 unit and 4 of the leases upon review actually have parking in it, right?
Okay.
Dedicated spot.
So it actually mentions parking.
Correct. So, which is an important point because
if it doesn't, then you don't have to give it away for free.
Free for all. So all he had to do was start regulating parking. He went around to every tenant and said, guys, new sheriff in town, I want to make things work. Part of that is it's not a free for all on parking. There's like 20 cars here, so we're going to start charging. Obviously first come, first serve. A bunch of people didn't do it. Then you start giving everybody that pays a tag, right? They're allowed to park. Everyone else isn't. He's like, it was a bit of a, an uproar for a little bit. People get, warnings, and then a couple people get towed. It's not great. It has to happen. And then all of a sudden, everybody's going, holy, wow, hey, we want parking. That allowed him to...
Change is tough.
Right? Change is tough. But point being, to just say, hey, it's as easy as, hey, guys, we're going to start charging for parking and everybody, right? I think that's a bit inauthentic. So the idea is, yes, there's probably going to be a little bit of an uproar, and that you're going to have to manage it. He uses property managers, fine, it works. But it's a really good way to add value.
It doesn't mean you're not going to do it. It's still well worth doing. And that's a system, like there's people who've done this, like just let them do it. They notify the tenants, they go through the process, you tow a couple of cars, there is an expense to that. So, hey, yes, that is in the short run some expenses that come with charging for parking because you're going to have to pay half the towing fee, right? Technically, the people who put their car there.
Is that how that works? Yeah.
That was my understanding. Like if you tow somebody's property off of your property, you're half responsible for the cost.
Interesting.
I didn't know that.
There we go.
Yeah. One kind of strategy I've heard with this is getting new people to charge is, let's say that a new tenant moves in, you're going to be charging $150 a month for parking for a new tenant. You can go to them and say, hey, this is what the cost of parking is, but because you were already here, because you're already a tenant, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to charge $100 or something. So you kind of make them feel like they're not just getting bulldozed into it, giving them a little bit of an upper hand and hopefully smoothing.
I got to deal with the guy, I do you a little favor. I negotiated hard for you.
Yeah. What do they call that in the LTV? That's coercion, actually, I believe is the term. But idea here, guys, is look, it's very much within your rights. How you handle it, how you go about it is your own thing. I just didn't want to come across to, hey, it's just as easy as putting a sign.
But it is pretty easy after we've gone through that. I mean, compared to what it could be, like compared to turning over tenants.
Oh my gosh, it's inconsequential in comparison.
Yes.
Like it's very, very easy.
That's what I wanted to establish. So let's just assume it was just like that. You could do it. You're proposing here 750. Oh, where's that come from? So 75 times 10 units?
You got it.
Yeah, okay. And then, so on a yearly, so that's each person's going to pay, you're assuming we're going to rent out a full 10 lockers. And heck, like you said, you could even rent them out to neighbors, whatever. Like there's opportunity with that stuff if you didn't fill them. But so that's $9,000 a year. And then how do I see you right beside, I know you got the value here, $150,000 lift. How'd you calculate that?
So all we did was take the $9,000, which is a lift, divided by the cap rate, which in this scenario is 6%. And we get $150,000.
Yeah. So the idea here is there's no additional expenses, assuming you're not towing anybody's cars. If you're just getting that parking revenue, and your property manager wasn't hypothetically taking a cut of that, that's a full $150,000. Knowing that the property manager is taking a little piece, it's going to be a little less than that, maybe in the 140s. But that's huge.
It's amazing.
That's something you can do in a year. Like, what can you do in a year that generates $150,000 of wealth untaxed wealth.
Right.
It's unrealized, but I mean, I want it.
Honestly, this is the exciting part of it. It's like path of least resistance. You know, we do the same thing for storage. You add 100. That's $250,000 we've added, and we've talked about the worst case scenario pain points. You got to tow a car or two. 250 grand.
Right. So say you tow a car or two in the first year, your value's not that full 100 because technically the net benefit is not that full amount. But in the future years, when you're not, once everybody's adapted, now you're in a position where you really are up 100,000 in value on that decision.
And we see it a lot where you would think that given this type of lift, everybody would be doing it, and most don't. In fact, vast majority.
Well, a lot of older landlords, they just don't, like they're lazy because they can be. Because their building doesn't owe them anything.
Yes.
Whereas like the people like us who want to come in and we're paying market rate, we got to go in and get every dollar out of this.
Yep. Yeah, very well said. They have it, they're happy, things are working, and they don't want to disturb the situation.
You see a lot of that. They still want $1 billion when they sell it.
Yeah.
And they'll give it to you with tenants that have been in there for 20 years with no rent increase.
Yeah. But the potential, though, you're paying.
It's full of potential. Those are always the ones that cut their own lawn. And
No, there's no expense here. I've done everything myself.
Kicky, send me the income and expenses. What expenses? There are no expenses.
The thing runs itself. Oh, okay. Yeah. That's great.
Okay, so let's go back up to the top for a second there, because you do have a higher cap rate than people were seeing a few years back.
Correct.
You're using a 6 here.
Yeah.
If cap rates come down again because of interest rates coming down.
What do you want, 4.5?
Yeah, let's just do a hypothetical if it was 4.5. You could even just change the current cap rate to 4.5 and see what it does to that number. I just want to show people how that changes.
I don't know why that didn't change.
Yeah, so now scroll down to the numbers there. Yeah. So if it's 4.5, you're 200 on the parking and you're 133 instead of 100 on the storage.
83,000, another 83,000 total just between those two.
Yeah, and then down here are utilities, right?
Yeah. As caps change, it could go the other way too. For sure. we could look at it at an 8 cap, but there's still a value there. And if you're only investing, say, you're adding 10 lockers at how much did you say a piece? Like 1,000, 2,000?
Yeah, a couple thousand.
Yeah. So say it's 2,000 in a worst case scenario per. So you're 20 grand in to add 100 to 150 value.
And again, we put $50 a month for this storage. If you're going to go spend $1,000 and make it look nice, and you said touch up floors and really singing, you're getting more than $50, right? So
so this is conservative.
Yeah.
Okay, and then let's talk about the utilities one. Matt, first go back and put that cap rate to the right cap.
6%.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Okay.
So utilities, same idea here. Is this the assumption of a cost recovery? Like you're getting the tenant at the pitch?
We kept it basic. So this one's 1,800 on the actual. So we just cut it down by half.
Yeah. So say you could get half the tenants to start paying a recovery amount. Like, in other words, you'd still advertise rent is plus utilities. Yeah. And then even though it's not separately metered, you just say, here's your monthly water bill.
Yeah. Yeah. We, the one in Hamilton, the 21 unit, most of those leases are 40 for parking and 60 for a cost recovery. Mm-hmm. And we didn't know that, so we're running the pro formas. Then we find that out. It's a huge impact on the deal, right? Like this is a massive change to the deal.
You didn't know there was a cost recovery.
We didn't know at the time. So when we were doing a deep dive with the sellers, we found that out, and it's like,
that makes a massive difference.
So they didn't have it on. They didn't have it on every unit. I think it was on 18 or something. But anyway,
still
less. Like the idea is staggering. Like you can see that this was a well designed, well modeled out deal.
Yep.
And when you add those two, it makes a staggering difference. It's remarkable.
Okay, so the simple math here is we're just saying instead of $1,800 a month in utilities, we're getting enough cost recovery back from tenants by adding their lease plus utilities that you're going to save. How much are we saving in a year? We're saving 8,000.
Yeah,
8,000. Oh, sorry, 7,100, right? 7,200. My quick math.
It's funny because I screwed up because before it was $9,000.
Okay, so 7,200 savings. Is that so? 7,200 divided by our cap rate, is that the 180, or did we do that right? No, we're a little off. You could just type in 7,200 divided by. Ooh. Yeah, get rid of the G54 there.
Yeah, we'll just do this.
There you go. Yeah, so that's your additional value from saving the expense because it's adding directly to the bottom line.
Yeah,
your operating income. Therefore, you divide that by your cap rate. Now you're making more money.
Yeah.
So let's put this at 5.5.
Actually, and that one's even better. Savings. Nobody's taxing you on your savings there. Like your property manager isn't taking a piece of your savings on the utilities cost.
Like we put it at a 5.5 cap, right? Let's just keep it simple. It's like you've really not done a lot. There's not a lot of effort, and our total value, if we've done the math right, is $400,000 in left. $400,000.
Yes. So caveat there, the $400,000 is not considering paying a property manager on the additional revenue. So there will be a slight adjustment, but that's wild. Like that's why we're talking about 3 things you could do, which would be the only things you're spending money on are the storage units.
Yeah.
The parking, you're not spending any. It's just time. You're going to probably pay an employee. So you could do an ROI on this because you could say, am I going to have to pay somebody, $5,000 to implement this program? Maybe you would. Do an ROI on $5,000 when you're adding value of this, plus the revenue of it, right? You can just look at the revenue of it, say it's going to make me $9,000. I'm going to pay $5,000 to implement it. Where else are you making over 100% ROI?
Exactly. And with the utilities, like there's a couple different ways to do it. If you can increase the efficiency as well. Like this talked about just cost sharing. If you're doing cost sharing and increasing the efficiency with, split heat pumps or just it's a really old furnace or whatever, you can do the cost benefit analysis of doing that as well of, is it worth spending money or just cost sharing?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like think about one unit.
Yeah.
If you could turn a unit over and instead of you're covering heat because it's a central boiler or whatever, let's just assume like you're going to do the whole building, but we'll look at one.
Yep.
What's it cost you to invest in that unit's heat pump, and then what does it save you?
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what is it saving you? I mean, on this, like say $80 a month on a unit, something like that.
Right.
Yeah, easily. Like depending on the size of the unit and all the other factors, like probably at least half.
Say it's $1,000 a year you're saving.
Yeah.
And it costs you $3,000 to put in the heat pump.
Yep.
Well, then you're 33% ROI on that investment. So that's still decent math. Like a lot of people would take that.
So we had a guy that went around to it was a 6 unit. He went around to each tenant, and one of the units was vacant. So we did a full model suite renovation, top to bottom. Then he went around to all the other tenants, all good paying, good quality tenants, and said, "Look, totally optional, but come over to unit 1 and have a look." And he said, and it was a checklist. So, hey, I would like you to do my bathroom, check off bathroom. And he did this exact formula saying, okay, the rental for the bathroom is going to cost me $10,000.
Yeah.
He had a certain NOI figure. So he said, look, check off the bathroom, we'll renovate it for you. And you got to come up $150 in month in a rent.
And there's no issue with landlord-tenant to do that?
So technically, this was a deep dive him and I had, is technically they could go back and, say, hey, you did the renos, and go to the tenant board and say, hey, we actually don't want to honor that. And they'd probably get away with it.
Yeah.
But you got good quality tenants.
If you got well-to-do tenants,
right?
It's not
and you're saying,
happen.
look, I'm not trying to cause a rift, but if you want, check it off. So he had a bunch of people checking stuff, reno their units, and then, all of a sudden it cascades through the building. And he's effectively lifted rent across the board. It was a fair number he did, but he got a huge lift on his building and happy tenants. Nobody left.
Yeah,
right?
you're not bulldozing them in.
No, man. It's just like, hey, if you'd like this done, let's check it off, right? And some people were saying, hey, we'd like it. I've got to, wait till Christmas, and can you do this while I'm gone, and all these things. But he got a...
So he knew his investment, and he probably had a killer ROI on it.
He did this exact formula, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is like, this is... Where else can you go and add $400,000 in value on a 10 unit without really causing a lot of trouble or doing too much work?
Yeah. Total investment in the ballpark of like $20,000.
Right? Like that's why we get excited when we walk through a building and I'm like, wow, storage units. Wow, nobody's charging for parking.
What I always loved about any real estate was that you valued with a cap rate. It's like it's so objective. Like if you can add dollars. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like cap rates, like it's not like people are shopping by a cap rate. Like there's such a shooting from the hip offer process for so many buyers and what have you. But the market still does honor a range, and you're somewhere in a range usually.
For sure.
Yeah,
exactly.
You can take a look at a deal and go, that's not going to sell. And it doesn't, because they're way
it's just way out of the range, right? But there is like a variance within that range.
Yeah, like we were looking at one a little northwest of the city, and it was at like a 1.5 cap rate. But at that cap rate, it's like $100,000 a door for that city. So it's like you're not if it was at the real cap rate for that city, you're looking at like $40,000 a door. No one in their right mind would sell at that price. So there always has to be that kind of middle ground of well, cap rate isn't going to dictate everything, as you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this case, that is a question, right? Like if this building was already at the most anyone could ever pay on a per unit basis, and you're thinking about adding in these storage lockers and stuff, it might not add the value in that case.
But it's real dollars, right? It's money.
It is still
in.
real dollars.
So like,
I mean, in the buyer's eyes, they're still going to look at it and say maybe they will go outside the acceptable range, right?
Yep.
Like in Burlington, there's sort of a top number for say like an apartment, like a price per door apartment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what is it, like 350, 400?
We just put together a proposal for one. It was literally 350, 400.
Like 400 is pushing it, right?
They wanted 550, and it's like, it's not there.
We're not there anymore. It's not. It's not the. It's not 2020.
You're not even getting that in Toronto.
Yeah. So. Right. You guys are going to compare it to new units go for this, so you can't.
Exactly, and it's always like another thing that I'm finding these days is people are just grouping units, not unit breakdown, unit size, total square footage of building. So it's like it's in that range, but then they'll come in with 6 bachelors and they'll go, well, I want 400 because 400 is the city, and it's like
there's a lot of nuance there still.
Yeah, that people
price
are
per
still,
unit is like doing surgery with a butter knife. That's what I say, right? It's like it gets you in the range of discussion, right? And people ask all the time. It's like, what's the price per unit? If you tell me it's 500 in Burlington, maybe
you're just gonna say right off the hop, we're probably not in the right space.
But there's always extenuating circumstance. That's the right word. There's always something. Right. But
the issue is like if I'm the owner of a building, I don't want to have my value in a place where I know an appraiser is going to say, "Hey, you're kind of outside of reasonable." I've said this for a while now. I don't like unique properties. I don't want to have unique properties.
Yeah, well said.
I just want to have stuff that's like anyone can see the value in it. And I've owned both. I've owned the unique where you have to sell people on why it's good, and then I've owned the ones that are just like so obviously good that everybody wants them. The latter's better.
Yeah. But even like if you're capped out price per unit, that means like truly with a reasonable cap rate that's applicable on it. That means you're running a very efficient building. Yeah. It means you have amazing rent. It means your utilities
are down. Does it mean don't do it? It sure doesn't in my mind. If I'm the owner and I can get like an ROI over 100% in just operating revenue, right? I'm making an extra $9,000. I spend, so between all 3 of those changes, you're over $20,000 a year in revenue. And I could do it for $20,000. That's 100% ROI.
Who doesn't?
Even if it doesn't add the value to the building, I still want the 100% in return.
Yeah, and I'd be shocked if it didn't. Like you really the way you get to that sort of max cap value is you've already done things,
everything,
right? Yeah. So the likelihood that those are there without these things is not possible.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
To that point, I was just we're just spitballing here. No, I don't think that scenario is common at all.
No, and it won't be without these things, right?
Yeah, exactly. To get to top value, you already have these things, which you don't. So there you go.
And even a lot of the turnkey we see, who you go to them and say, "Wow, I was just doing this." It's like still not charging for parking, like super efficient, right? All new heat pumps, everything.
You think everybody should be charging for parking?
Yes.
Like if you had a duplex, you should charge each tenant.
If you can, why? Like I mean, you're murdering money if you don't. I don't understand why people wouldn't like it.
So you just still advertise it. You say there's parking, but then when it comes time to like fill the application, you tell them the price, and it's
you just be honest about it. But I mean, if you've got a fully renovated unit, here's the market price, and hey, if you want to park, it's going to cost you this much. Right?
That's brilliant stuff. I like it.
All
right, I loved this episode. This is a little bit of a different take, a little more specific, but definitely a good conversation and like super value add for people. Like I think there's so much that anybody watching this, like think about your portfolio. Where can you add value in your portfolio? This is going to help most people who watch this.
Yeah. And we love this stuff, as you can tell. So if you want to have a chat about it, you're thinking strategy, even if you're not thinking about selling, call us. I love this stuff. I know you do too.
Yeah.
Where can we add it?
Yeah, and on that note, like so you guys you'll do a chat with people who own buildings, talk to them about their portfolio, kind of get into that discussion because even if they're not doing anything now, hey, who knows down the road? And it's good to have, like if you're a multifamily investor, it's good to have people like this in your network. So on that note, right below this video is an opt-in. So there's a link for an opt-in to the Insiders Club for REI Hot Seat, which basically gets you on the distribution for deals of the week. And it also gets you into the process to have a chat with Dave. Would it be you, Jake?
Me,
a member of the team?
Somebody on
the team, which the team is basically, describe your team. Like who's on the team?
Me, Brad, Zach, Jacob.
And everybody's commercial focused, multifamily focused. investor focused. So that's the idea. Okay. And then also, if you made it this far, perfect. All right, guys, we'll see you next week.